Dr. Kathi Hiyane-Brown, President of Whatcom Community College. Actually, since 2007, she'll be explaining the effects of COVID-19 on the college. Kathi is a national recognized advocate for community colleges, organizational development, leadership diversity. In addition to her duties as the president of WCC, Kathi conducts training on leadership and diversity in venues locally, nationally, and internationally. She is committed to supporting leadership development initiatives with underrepresented groups and is a mentor in many aspiring leaders. Kathi currently serves as the founding and executive committee member of the National Asian Pacific Islander Council, an affiliate of the Council of the American Association of Community Colleges. She's a member of the Advisory Council for the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning. She has served as Education Co-Chair of the National Initiative of Cybersecurity Education, the past chair and chair of the American Association of Community Colleges, and the list goes on and on. Born in Hawaii, Kathi holds a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology from Grinnell, a Master's of Arts in Instructional Design and Technology from the University of Iowa, and a doctorate in Education and Community College Leadership from Oregon State University. Kathi, thanks for agreeing to sharing the recent events in Whatcom Community College. She is joined with Rafika Colby from her office. And also, Kathi, congratulations on the opening of the first dormitory at your college. So Kathi, you have the floor.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, welcome to President Goldfogle and to my fellow Rotarians. Thank you for this opportunity. I didn't know that people wanted to know anything more about the COVID pandemic. You know, it seems like we've been living and breathing it for the past decade. I certainly feel that it has been a 24/7 event for me and for people at the college. The original, Paul, I think we talked about titles until we came to the one we have here, Navigating Uncharted Waters of a Global Pandemic. I think the first thought was having something like Whatcom and COVID. And I want to say that that is one partnership that I want to dissolve. Don't want to be associated with COVID. I don't think any of us want to, but it is certainly an unprecedented time in our history. And what I will share with you is just some of my experiences and personal reflections of what has happened at the college, to the college, based on the global pandemic. I also want to have a disclaimer that I am by no means a medical expert, and to have Gary Goldfogle in the audience makes me nervous. My only exposure to medicine was a short stint as a graduate student at the University of Iowa, working with environmental health and just dealing with all kinds of diseases found and transmitted by animals throughout the rural communities. So that's about as far as I go. Certainly have not been formally trained in dealing with pandemics nor with crises of this sort. One of the first things that I'd like to do when I have some spare time is to be able to go through a graduate program as a curriculum developer to try to instill within the curriculum some training to future presidents of community colleges about what the job is really all about. So with that, I want to start with just a timeline of events and key decisions. And this just kind of puts things into context. At least for me, it was very helpful to think back how long have we been dealing with this issue of COVID-19. And I remembered clearly a February 4th memo that I sent to the college community saying, we need to be alerted. by this public health crisis. And these are the kinds of steps we're taking to help ensure your safety and health here at the college. And that's what I want to reiterate, that everything that we have done in terms of decisions that we have made on the basis of faculty and staff have been keeping their safety and their health as our number one priority. So all of our decisions that we've made have been driven by any kind of assistance that we've received, either from the state or from our local Whatcom Health Department, from the governor's office to experts at the University of Washington and in other areas. So keep in mind that the decisions we make may not always seem reasonable or rationally from an economic sense, but we were totally driven in our decision making, thinking about the health and safety of our students, faculty, and staff. So I'm about to share with you this wild ride in uncharted waters. And I'm just going to speak to where we are right now and then talk about the impacts on the college and the impacts on our students and just a few leadership lessons that I've learned throughout all of this. So in March, Whatcom Community College, like many of the other colleges and universities throughout the state and the country, had to make decisions about operations and instruction with little data or common reference. We were also new to this. It was also very foreign. So while the college had a strong online presence, we really did well in terms of designing online courses for our students. We still had not taken it to the next level, which was taking all of our coursework, all of our instruction and student services, and put it in a virtual environment. We had really felt quite good about the results of our online instruction. For example, when we did an assessment of scores of students who were taking online courses, this is pre-COVID, and compared their grades and their completion rates to students who had been in face-to-face instruction, our online students did as well as our students who were getting instruction face-to-face. So needless to say, we're pretty confident, but very anxious about going to a virtual environment because we know not all students do well with online instruction. Not all faculty and our instructors do well or favor online instruction. Nevertheless, we were forced into this virtual environment. And what we did in preparation for it was basically have intensive training for our faculty and staff on how to conduct online courses in the most effective way to reach a large number of students. We have an absolutely fantastic group of faculty, and we have some that were just at the cutting edge of using technology and introducing that into their classroom as well as using the virtual environment. And they acted as mentors to other faculty. So we had intensive training going on throughout many hours, throughout many days to prepare our faculty. Now we also knew that our students were struggling. First, many of them did not or were not familiar with the online environment. And many of our students did not have access to a computer, to a personal computer. They were coming to campus to get that computer, to get that hardware and software to use in our computer labs. Well, we had decided to close the campus on March 25th. So there was an urgent need to provide hardware and software for students. Shauna knows more than she wants to about this because Ward, her spouse, was instrumental in securing a number of computers and hotspots to enable our students to be able to use those computers to do their work. Amazingly enough, there are large numbers of our students who live in the county who had no Wi-Fi access. And so the hotspots were needed. We also created opportunities for our students to come to our parking lots to be able to access our internet. So there were so many challenges. And of course, there's always the anxiety of, I have never taken a class online. What is it going to be like? How am I going to interface with my instructor? Who do I go to when I have help? So we had to also provide a whole host of student support services for our students. And so that meant advising, that meant counseling, that meant a whole host of resources for them to access library reference books. We also had to provide new ways of getting textbooks to students, whether mailing them or having a pickup site in our parking lots. And lo and behold, one of the most creative and interesting ways in which our faculty worked was learning how to set up experiments that could be done virtually or at home for their science labs. We also had a very creative ceramics instructor who had to figure out how to do a ceramic course at home or through virtual means. And so getting the equipment, getting the clay to students was one challenge, but the other was also conducting instruction where students actually came out with a piece. I don't want to tell you how I engaged in creating a ceramic piece virtually, not here at Whatcom. I would never shame myself by being a student here, but it is very challenging, and kudos go to the faculty and staff who did a marvelous job of trying to quickly pivot. And I'm talking about in March, we closed the campus on March 27th and instruction on March 25th, and instruction continued. So that's the timeline. What I want to say is we're still dealing with planning. We are about to make a decision about what we're going to do for winter quarter. I know recently the University of California campuses chose to have remote instruction throughout the rest of the academic year. So those are kinds of really heavy decisions that we have to make, and we have to make them in a timely manner. Students need to prepare for their next steps. Faculty need to prepare for their next courses. So let me just say here, COVID impacts on campus. And excuse me, I'm trying to also be sure I'm following my timeline here. Rafika, if you could show the COVID impacts on campus. And this is what we're experiencing. We're having to redesign and implement new ways to serve and support our students in a virtual environment. Here again, there's a huge reliance on technology, both developing an infrastructure to support the computer networks within our faculty and staff and students. I think Rafika may be having some difficulty getting the slide up there. No, that's not the right slide. If you could go back one, okay, it's right in the middle. It's the next one over. Okay, right there, COVID-19 impacts on the college. And so there's a huge reliance on technology. We're having to also think creatively about when we have open access to a campus, how we redesign our learning spaces, our classrooms, our labs, because we feel that in initial phases of reentry, we'll still have to do a lot of social distancing. We have experienced a significant amount of expenditures related to COVID response, including personal protective equipment for faculty, staff, and students, contact tracing, more frequent and thorough cleaning of facilities, needing additional staff support in the area of maintenance, and even looking at how we might reconfigure certain kinds of jobs on campus because of different needs. Another is budget reduction. As you know, as a state supported institution, our basic operational costs come from the legislature and the governor. And so much of our allocation is adjusted according to the revenues that come in. to the state. And so based on COVID and the impact on COVID on the economy, we know for a fact and have been notified by the Office of Financial Management that the revenue stream is not sufficient to fully support our allocation, our operating fund. And so we have been on a huge roller coaster about what that number might be in terms of reduction. It may be anywhere from 10 to 15% for the coming year or for the first year of the biennium. It could be delayed. It could be greater in the second year of the biennium. And we'll really never know truly what that number is, what that budget reduction percentage might be until the legislature reconvenes and takes final action. And so we're dealing in this environment of having increased need for our students, faculty, and staff, but in an atmosphere where we know we will be hit with a budget reduction. On top of the budget reduction, part of our operating costs are financed and supported through enrollment and through tuition. And we are all experiencing a significant enrollment decline. Now, this is unlike any other time in our history where we see unemployment numbers rise, and at the same time, we see a rise in enrollment. But COVID has had an opposite effect on our enrollments. And we're guessing, but they're educated guesses as to why that is occurring. Most students are very anxious about taking classes online. Most students are very anxious about their ability to pay for their education. Most students are unable to even keep their jobs. So going back to college or studying becomes a second or third or a lower priority in their lives. And so we have so many variables that might lead a student to perhaps defer their decision to come to college or to continue their college education. And so most of the enrollment declines are in double digits. And so it's been very difficult to try to even predict how we go about planning our course schedule based on that unknown number. We are going to be starting courses in the coming week, next week. And so we'll have a better idea of what those numbers will be. So I see where the slide changed in the midst. So could we go to the next slide, which looks at student impact? And I'm not right here. Okay, this is great. This slide is really meant to tell you about our students. And before I go into that particular slide, I want to say that the college really has had a strong history of serving students and trying to get students actively engaged in their learning. And that means that we have had a really strong program that really engages students on campus. We have a lot of clubs on campus, and they may be anything from the Spanish class or the Spanish club to the environmental and sustainability club, but we try to provide those opportunities where students can get to meet and talk with one another and support each other. So COVID has really had an impact on our students in that they have no means of really getting together except virtually. And we are finding that as a result, many students feel very isolated. And so we not only have the financial challenges brought about by COVID, but we have all of these mental health issues that are now arising from our students. As it relates to our students, you will see here that many of students in community colleges tend to be working adults. And so when a person loses a job or loses employment, they lose the means to really attend college or to continue to attend college. One of the great things that did happen for our students was the CARES Act funding, which is federal funds. And Whatcom received about $1.2 million in CARE Act funding that was designated for students. And those dollars would have to go directly to students. To date, we have granted approximately $682,000 to about 892 students. And this was in the spring and in the summer. We have not yet begun our fall quarter. Our fall quarter applications to date, and this is for the upcoming fall quarter only, we have over 600 applications requesting over $700,000. So you can see that we will soon, our needs or our student needs will exceed the amount of money that we have received from the federal government. Now, 27% of our applicants did not qualify for CARES Act funding, primarily, and not all, but primarily this is due to the fact that CARES Act funding is not granted to undocumented students. And we all know the community colleges is an access point for many of these students, hence creating an equity issue. Now, our WCC Foundation, and many of you have been donors or are donors of our foundation, have really impacted our ability and positively impacted our ability to add to the pot of money that is available for students. And so the awards that we have, I believe, have totaled $100,000 to date, coming from private donations raised by the WCC Foundation. The student awards are up to $1,000 a person, with most applicants receiving at least $750. The areas of highest need: housing, rental assistance, tuition and fees, books and course materials. Others are child-related, such as childcare. There are also requests for health and dental assistance. So when possible, when we run out of dollars or we're unable to meet everyone's needs, we do have access to community resources where we could possibly, and we have been, directing students to those resources. So as you can see, there's a huge financial need on the part of our students. And these are not just WCC students. These are students going to all colleges and universities. You can find students in need at BTC, at Western Washington, at Northwest Indian College. But I wanted to use this slide as a means of saying that our students are able to receive some support. I do want to use this as an opportunity to thank you all who have given in the past, and for those who haven't, to give some consideration to helping our students. Let me see. I believe this is the last slide, so you can leave it up or take it down. But I do want to say, before we go to questions, that there has been a whole lot of coordination statewide among all higher education. And this past year, I served as the president of the President's Council, so to speak, of all 34 community college presidents in the state system. And I had the wonderful opportunity to work with all of the presidents from all the private and public higher ed institutions, colleges and universities throughout the state of Washington. It was a fantastic effort where we got together as a group to share best practices, to support one another. And probably the most significant piece of work that we got accomplished was working together to assist the governor in creating a re-entry plan for higher education. It's really a reopening, and the conditions under which we reopen our colleges and university campuses during this period. I know that the plan has been closely followed. We still, however, see some hot spots on our university campuses that have occurred primarily in partying in sororities and fraternities and in dormitories. We have not had that experience in community colleges. I would say about a third of the community colleges in the state of Washington have residence halls, but they are not dormitories. And so those of us who have those residence halls are able to place and limit the number of students within a hall. Their activities are closely monitored. Some of them may feel like they're in a residence hall prison because of all the kinds of protocols we have in place and the oversight and supervision that's provided for those students. But I must say here again that I'm very proud of the fact that the Washington higher ed community have worked so closely together in ensuring that all students can still learn and thrive in a healthy and safe environment. So lessons learned, I just wanted to give you just a few things that I've learned. COVID response, certainly any kind of crisis response for leadership is a 24/7 job. It's all consuming, and it's all consuming for all of our faculty, staff, and other administrators. There are no real answers to all of our questions. And just when you think you have the answer or you found the answer, another question emerges. I've often thought that to be a successful leader, you need to be proactive and not reactive. Well, it's really being both. You have to be reactive because you have to be aware of those external factors that are occurring around you and you can't ignore them. Yet you can be proactive. And you can only be proactive if you rely on a support system. And a support system is so essential. It's looking to others to share their expertise, to help guide through the heavy decisions. And my greatest support system is my higher education community and the community at large here in Whatcom County. Flexibility and resilience is absolutely essential, and key is communication. In this day and age, people are feeling very isolated. I feel at times isolated from my colleagues and from students. People are hungry for information. So my mantra to my administrators is be informed and keep others informed as well. This is all about community supporting one another. And lastly, I have to say to myself every night and every day, never give up hope. Our students are counting on us. So this sort of ends my formal remarks, and I take any questions and hopefully I can answer them.
You have about 3 minutes for questions. You can take a couple. Unmute yourself if you have a question.
Kathy, I have a question. You have not mentioned your international students, and I know the community college has some. What has been the status of those students?
Yeah, well, we've about the majority of our international students are taking online classes while in their home countries. We have about a third of them that are still here in the community. Some of them want to return back to their homes, but they have no means to do that, either because of, well, primarily because of restricted funds. And so they're seeking to stay here in this country and in this community. There is great fear among international students of coming to the United States to study. It's going to be a huge endeavor to try to gain the confidence of those students around the country to return to the United States to study. They feel very uncomfortable here. They feel they're going to be unsafe, and their parents are feeling that they're going to be unsafe. And they don't feel welcomed for all the reasons that some of us know about, and that is straight from the federal government down to several other kinds of state governments that have made it clear that they don't want foreign students on their campuses.
Any other questions? We have time for one more question.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Kathy. So let me just do a quick congratulations to you for really managing this and doing it in cooperation, not only with the other institutions here in Bellingham, but with statewide. You are the primo collaborator, and it's really nice to see somebody from Bellingham taking that leadership role at the state level. I think that what you've done is really led in many ways for the rest of the higher ed community. And I share your concern about international students and give them a lot of credit for really weathering a really uncomfortable situation for them here in this country. So thank you. And I know we all extend you our best wishes, because I am so glad I am not a higher ed administrator anymore.
Yeah, I
You
thought
are up
about
against
that.
some pretty
Well,
tough decisions.
Well, thank you, Catherine. And you know, it's not just about the international students. Our students of color, students from underrepresented groups are under tremendous pressure right now, our own local students. We're finding that those students have less access to resources. They have many barriers before them. And so one of our focus and priorities for this coming year is really becoming an equity-minded institution where all students have an equal opportunity to succeed, and we bridge the gaps, achievement gaps that we have between underrepresented students and the white majority culture.
Thank you.
Kathy, I'd like to thank you very much for an excellent program, and we're very proud to have you as a Rotarian.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you all for your support. Very much appreciated by everyone, especially our students.
Okay, I'm going to do my COVID report, but I'll do it after bringing the meeting to a conclusion. I want to thank all of the people who made this meeting possible. Sandy, as always, Tim Ferriss, Rick Kaiser, John Harris, Bruce Clausen, Catherine Reardon, John Moffett, Peter, Paul Gray, Scott Wallace, and of course, Kathy. And I think I mentioned John Harris. If I missed anyone, my apologies. I think we had, if not a record, close to a record number of participants at this meeting. I think that's largely a tribute to Kathy. And with that, we're adjourned. I'll just quickly give you a COVID report. As we anticipated a couple weeks ago with the long weekend, the last few days have seen an increased number of positive test results. Over the last week, the hospital's gone from 0 to a maximum of 8, now back down to 6 patients that have been hospitalized on any given day. None of those patients have required ICU level of care. If you continue to follow the COVID dashboard, we make all of the criteria for advancement from phase 2 to phase 3, except for the number of cases per 100,000. We were below that number for the 1 week period, not this week, but the week before it. So from September 4th to September 10th, we've had 20 cases. And since it's over a 2 week period, that's made our 2 week total at 40. And so we fail that metric. All the other metrics are still positive. I'm still seeing, and I still believe that the majority, or at least a substantial number, of the positive test results are not symptomatic people, but are people who are being identified by contact tracing, which continues with a lot of effort and a lot of success. So I'm anticipating that the next week we will see the numbers drop back down again. I'm optimistic. I'm a little bit concerned about the smoke in the air precipitating people with respiratory problems, and that might be a comorbidity that if you added COVID into the equation, along with people that have pre-existing COPD, asthma, reduced lung function, that could lead to more severe illness, and something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I remind everybody that it's really easy to follow the COVID dashboard, and there's a great deal of useful information on it. If anybody has trouble accessing it or interpreting it, contact me and I'll be happy to help you do so. And I think that that's pretty much what I wanted to say for today. I'm open to any last minute questions before we adjourn and send you all back into the world.
No last minute questions, but I'm enjoying Peter Thiessen's dog.
Oh yeah, I have been too. What's your dog's name, Peter? You have to unmute yourself though. Oops, hold on. Didn't get to hear it because you're muted.
That's Harper.
Harper,
She's my wingman right now.
way to go. This has been, COVID has been good for dogs. Anyone else? Well, not seeing anyone else. I'll bring the 4,662nd meeting to an end. Thank you all for being Rotarians. Thank you for your participation. Drag other people to our Zoom meetings, and let's keep the Rotary Club the best service club it can possibly be. Off, everybody. See you next week.